In this video, I'm going to look at the forward part of one of the oldest, most famous wrecks of Truk Lagoon, the 385 feet long transport ship San Francisco Maru. Built in 1919, she was sunk on 18th February 1944 in this remote Pacific atoll, along with more than 40 other Japanese ships and more than 250 planes. The strike was by more than 600 American planes flying from the 9 aircraft carriers of Task Force 58 in a two-day strike codenamed Operation Hailstone. During the night of 16th February 1944, the 9 Task Force 58 carriers arrived undetected in darkness some 100 miles off Truk, which was then a major Japanese advanced fortress far out into the Pacific towards Hawaii. At 04:30 on 17th February 1944, the carriers began launching their planes. The strike would be devastating. San Francisco Maru was hit by several bombs that destroyed her stern area. She is the large freighter in the middle of this shot, burning from her stern area. She finally went to the bottom on the second day of the strike, 18th February 1944, still filled with her wartime cargo. Today she sits upright in about 60 to 65 metres of water with about 50 metres to the deck. And there's a whole chapter about this wreck in my book, Dive Truk Lagoon. The dive starts with a descent down the downline, which is tied off on the port side of the ship, just above the bridge area. From there we'll move forward. So you can see here how fully that the bridge has collapsed. You're now looking at the very top of the bridge, and you've got the two lifeboat davits on the port side here. One's swung out, the other is swung in. So I'm just getting my buoyancy sorted out just now after the descent. I'm probably at about 45 metres here, just moving forward over the top of the bridge towards the foredeck and the two large cargo holds. So I'm just moving forward up the port side, and you can see the single Type 95 Hago tank, which was being carried as deck cargo on the port side. Somebody's taking crockery out the galley and put it on top of the turret, which is completely inappropriate in my view. So you can just see the single tank over there on the port side, and there's two more tanks on the starboard side. And then there's two of these large refueling tanker trucks being carried on the tween deck of hold number 2. So that's the frontage of the collapsed bridge, just off to right of shot. And this is hold number 2. These beams that run across it are really the cargo hatch cover beams. They supported the hatch cover. There was also an ordinary truck on top, and you can just see the wheels and tyres of that truck. It's largely disintegrated now. Swinging around to look forward, the large flat section over to the left of shot, that's actually the top of one of the tanker trucks, sitting on the hatch cover beams of the tween deck below the main deck or weather deck. So that is the engine area. And you can see the radiator up front with the two headlamps, one either side, and the large 1930s mudguards. And then at right of shot you can see the second tanker truck, the engine, mudguards, tyres and headlamps of it. So these are the winches that would have operated the derricks to load and unload the deck cargo and the cargo in the holds. Just looking at the radiator grill of the starboard truck here, you'll see there's 55-gallon drums of avgas just stored nearby, and I always wondered if that was avgas they would just fuel up the tanker truck once it had been swung ashore on a derrick. You can also see how the tanker compartment itself is crushed, so they would have been empty when they were being transported, and with just air inside them the water pressure has crushed the tank. Just moving over now to the starboard side, where there are two of these Type 95 Hago tanks. So this is it in action. These are light tanks, great for anti-infantry work and work through the jungles, for example, of Malaya, but pretty poor when they came up against the American Sherman tank. They only had a 2-inch main gun, which couldn't penetrate the Sherman's armour. So I've covered these tanks in another video in this Truk Lagoon playlist if you want to have a look for that. I'm just moving out over the starboard side of the ship, and you can see the hull dropping away down to the seabed far below at about 60 or 65 metres depth. These two tanks have moved during the sinking process, so that one of the tanks now rests partly on top of the other tank and partly out over the starboard side of the ship. I've just wheeled around now to look forward right up towards the bow, and you can see the foremast there with its cross tree. The top section of the foremast has been taken away, presumably to minimise the danger to shipping. That's just the top of these tanks that I'm just moving over now. I've dropped now down to the main deck or weather deck at a depth of about 50 metres. We had helium organised for this trip so we could go deeper. 50 metres is the recognised maximum safe diving limit for air, I guess you could say. So without helium, we're diving just on standard compressed air here, and so we're not going to go much deeper into these holes on this occasion. So I've moved round the foremast. This is hold number 1 coming into view now. It's also got its hatch cover beams in place, and up front you can see the bandstand platform for the 3-inch bow gun. I'm now moving over towards hold number 1. You can see it's still got its hatch cover beams in place, and this is probably the most famous hold in all of Truk Lagoon, for it's the one with these hundreds of hemispherical beach mines, each with 2 handles welded on top of them. So the Japanese would bury these mines on the beaches below the high water mark. When an American landing craft ran over them, the effect would be devastating. So this hold was full right to these hatch cover beams in 1990 when I first dived Truk Lagoon. And over the decades, local Chuckies divers have been bouncing this wreck and taking these mines out of it and using the dynamite for dynamite fishing. So it's been pretty well robbed out. You can see some depth charges stored there on the tween deck, just to the left of the beach mines. Some more depth charges. And then here we've got these rectangular corrugated or ribbed flash-proof containers that would have held the bags containing the cordite propellant for large naval guns. And there's some propellant cartridges in brass casings. You can actually see some of the cordite spaghetti-like materials spilled out of the end of one of those propellant charges. Moving forward away from hold number 1, we've got the upright section of the breakwater on the starboard side, just designed to deflect water coming over the bow away from the holes. And then this is the bandstand platform for the bow gun, 3-inch gun. So this is what the gun looks like, swung out to port, presumably the direction of the final attack before she's sunk, and there's boxes of ready-use ammo just behind the gun. So I'm just moving up onto the gun platform, and I'm staring just now at the starboard one of the various boxes of ready-use ammo. I just kept it there so if enemy contact developed, they could immediately open the boxes, take out the shells, put it in the gun and start firing, and not have to wait for shells to come up from the holes down below. So I've just turned around now and I'm heading back aft towards the bridge, passing the port side of hold number 1. Off to left a shot. There's the winches for operating the cargo booms and the derricks, with a foremast there in the centre, short king posts either side. So I'm just approaching the 2 winches now on the aft side of the foremast, and these winches would have worked the derricks to load and unload hole number 2, which is the one with the 2 tanker trucks that we saw earlier.
Is that character?
So there's hole number 2, and you can see the single Type 95 Hago tank on the port side, which I'm just approaching just now. And some of you may recognise this tank as the cover shot for the second edition of Dive Truk Lagoon. And someone, probably with the best intentions, but I think completely inappropriately, has taken this crockery out of the galley and put it on top of perhaps most iconic tank in Truk Lagoon, and it just ruins every shot of that tank. Nice to see the crockery, but I think it's so wrong.